Our show's what you know. We'll always watch TV. And if you think we can't, we'll watch more and you'll see. That's why the people of the web believe in Jim from Las Vegas and Jakob from Sweden.
Shows What You Know, your television podcast. I am Jim from Las Vegas.
And I'm Jakob from Sweden. Welcome back to Shows What You Know, where we talk about television, no matter if Cobra Kai has come out this week or not. No matter if there's a finale of an exciting show or not. We got TV news for you. We got updates on what we've been watching. We got chats, probably some bits. Who knows? Welcome back to Shows What You Know.
Yeah, and real quick, we're going to get into some news. We're going to get into some what you've been watching. But real quick, last week's episode, when we were discussing the first 5 episodes of Cobra Kai, amongst a few other things, it was very clear that we've hosted a Cobra Kai podcast, because if you look at the chapters on our YouTube video, there's just like a little thing here on one end, a little thing here on the other end, and this huge chunk in the middle. It's all Cobra Kai. And I'm like, oh my God, it's almost like we talk about this show. So if you missed that one, make sure you check it out either on our podcast feed or the Shows What You Know YouTube. But
yeah,
real
and
quick,
if you want chapters, if you want to skip the boring parts, like the parts we're doing right now, to get to the good shit, go to youtube.com/showswhatyouknow.
A quick side question. It is related to TV. Jacob, are there too many TV shows?
Oh, the age-old question that we've been asking ourselves for years. I feel like, don't say that, because, the economy, interest rates, TV shows, we're gonna head into a drought. If not a drought, at least like we're definitely on the downswing now. So what's brought this question up? I feel like we've discussed it before.
You know what? Maybe put a pin in that, because it'll come up in. I'll bring it back in what we've been watching, because I think that's what made me think about it. So we'll circle back. But beforehand, maybe this answers the question. Dropping into some news here. Comic-Con just happened this past weekend. We missed the first trailer of this, but they did release another trailer. This is for the Penguin Max show. I guess HBO Max, I should say, but it's, Max, the one to watch for HBO. They released a new trailer. So this is reminiscent of Sopranos, if you will. Did you watch the Matt Reeves Batman, Jacob?
That's the film, right? Was that
correct,
black and white, or did it just feel like it was in black and white?
No, but it did have like the, what do they use? Not the void, the volume. They did use the volume a lot, but it had kind of like this, almost red tint to a lot of it. Like, it was the Riddler was very much like a serial killer type 7 character, and
it's very noir.
Yes, yes. And then in that movie, instead of finding a man of a build and look of a James Gandolfini, they found a Colin Farrell, and they put a bunch of prosthetics and shit on him to make him look like more of a pudgy regular guy. I mean, I'm no shame on Gandolfini. I mean, Gandolfini was a handsome man in his own right, but you know what I mean. Like, just imagine if in Sopranos they're like, well, let's just get Brad Pitt and put a bunch of shit on him, and we won't get a James Gandolfini type. But either way, that's a discussion for another day. But that
so is this actually is this in the canon of that film, or is it just kind of inspired? Okay, so is it Colin Farrell then?
Yes, yeah, we do have a quick intro here to the trailer. It is Colin Farrell bringing us in. Apparently, this takes place a week or two after the film. So, I mean, we've been seeing this stuff a lot. I mean, especially with comic book movies and comic book universes, where they try to, or even like, I guess maybe what Cobra Kai could do. I doubt it, though, with the new Karate Kid movie. But where they try to like extend into TV, but then it's like, are you asking the audience too much now? Like, how important can you make it to events of the universe and not mess up your film audience, but also not make a TV show that if someone hasn't watched a movie or a few movies, be involved? So we'll see how this plays out. But anyways, enough of my jabbering. Let's just watch the new trailer real quick. I haven't seen this one.
Let's do it.
Let's see.
Kai. I'm Colin Farrell. Check out the trailer for my new series, The Penguin.
Trust me, it's just the beginning. Come on. You can help me out. Come on.
Life is just a dream.
You promised me, Oswald.
I know, Ma.
I deserve a better life.
I'm working on it.
Sorry, can you pause it, Jim?
Well,
Yeah, sorry.
You did say there were Sopranos vibes to this show in general, and like I wasn't sure what you meant. And then the very first scene, I'm like, just sub in James Gandolfini, and that is a scene from The Sopranos with him sort of trying to get his mom to cheer up and playing her old music that she likes and saying, "I'm gonna get you the world."
And I didn't even see an element like this in the first trailer they released about a month ago. It was more just like the gangster vibes. But yeah, I was thinking the same thing, seeing this here. I guess it's similar to how like the Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix was almost like a take on Taxi Driver, but with the Joker.
Yeah.
working on it. World ain't set up for the honest man to succeed. That should be the American dream right there. You know, beautiful story with a happy ending. But that ain't the way the world works. America's a hustle. Not that I'm complaining.
Penguin, you waltzing in here like you mean something. We're in the middle of a gang war.
Carmine Falcone's dead.
If we don't protect what's ours, we just look weak. The streets are talking again. They know there's only one man big enough to run this city.
Do you remember Carmine's daughter? Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Sophia, I thought you was still at,
Arkham? No. I've been rehabilitated.
You're playing a dangerous game with this family, Aunt. You think I want Sophia Falcone knocking on my door?
She is the hangman.
What is it you're really after, Oz?
I'm gonna tear down the empire from the inside out.
whoever controls the drug business controls the streets.
I'll be running the whole damn trade.
I got ambition. I can help you.
Hey! Feel alive, Vic, huh? Feel your heart beating?
This city is meant to be yours, sweetheart. What are you gonna do to get it?
Trust me. It's just the beginning.
I wasn't sure they're going to throw another tag in there or something. So, yeah, I don't know. What do you think here?
I mean, yeah, I guess so. That's my okay, sure. I mean, I kept wondering, would I rather see just a regular gangster show? But I feel like I like the potential that it gets super elevated and weird, and this is definitely a different take, I guess. I mean, look, I've never gone around like, oh, I need to know more about the Penguin and his background. It's more like, I like the way it looks. You know, I like The Sopranos. So,
yeah.
You know, it's not going to be The Sopranos, but also, you know, it's HBO. It probably won't be terrible. What do you think?
I'm kind of with that. I mean, because even going back to, like I mentioned, the Joaquin Phoenix Joker, I know a lot of people have issues with that, but I actually think that's a pretty good movie. I mean, I do get it. I get it can be a bit redundant, or you know, like almost aping Taxi Driver a bit, or King of Comedy or something. But also, I mean, there are regular movies that are similar. You know, there are movies all the time where like, oh, has a blah 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 type feel, so it's not out of the realm. I mean, taking away all this death of creativity discussion of like, oh, it's the only way to get a project made is to tie it to an IP or something. On the surface, I'm in, at least for a little bit. I'll give it a couple episodes for sure. I mean, who am I kidding? I'll watch all of them, even if I don't like it.
Yeah.
Even if I watch the first two and I don't like it. But I'll definitely give it a chance. And I do like the idea. I mean, as for comic books, I remember like in 2004 or 3 or something like that, there's a run of Kingpin books that they put out. That was a similar thing. It was focused on Kingpin, and it had like a gangster movie Sopranos feel. And I remember at the time thinking like, oh, that's such a good idea. And now they're kind of doing it. So, I mean, I'm with it.
Yeah, and I don't suppose there's a version of like that for the Penguin. Do you know? Because it feels like there's so much material that there could be a very dark and gritty version of the Penguin. I'm on sort of the page for this on Wikipedia. I can't find like here's the specific thing it's based on or whatever. But you know, what I like about it is you get what they're going for, and I'm like, I think you could maybe do this. The film was I don't actually remember the film very well, but I remember my impression of the film being quite positive. So I'm like, I feel like you could probably pull this off. It's 8 episodes. That's a good amount of episodes, and it's premiering relatively soon, September 19th, 2024. 8 episodes.
So it's good. It's something we can discuss in the near future. See how it plays out. I like the idea, and yeah, I'm sure there's stuff that they could pull from actual canon if they want to. I mean, you know how that goes these days. There'll be someone that's like, well, actually, based on Batman 422 in 2002, there's precedence for what they're doing here. So, but yeah, I'm in. I know it sounds stupid to be like compare it to the Sopranos, but it's like, you know, he looks like he doesn't look like James Gandolfini. Like I said, like James Gandolfini is still a handsome, big burly man. But it's hard not to make that connection when you see a balding big guy with guns and apparently a like overgiving mother or something. So, you know, I doubt it's gonna capture the same heights, but it's hard not to make that comparison in my head.
I mean, you'd be stupid not to, really.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, and maybe this is for the people that fast forward through the Melfi scenes. This will maybe be one of those shows. Like, oh, I fast forward. Finally, the show for me, the Penguin.
I don't know. The Penguin could have a therapist. We don't know. There's still scope for that. Are you familiar with Sophia Falcone, the hangman, who is, I guess, Carmine? There's even a crime boss called Carmine in this. Carmine Falcone. His daughter, I guess, is Kristen Milioti in this, and she's a serial killer, I guess, or a murderer in the show, and leads the crime family to some, or in the comics, and leads the crime family to some extent. But I'm not familiar. Would you have any familiarity at all?
I'm not now. I don't know. I don't know DC Comics that well. I know him a little bit, but also I like that actress a lot. She's in a lot of projects that I enjoy. So
cool. Plus we have a Christopher type with for the main cast they only list 3 people, and the third person is a teenager who befriends Cobblepot, aka the Penguin, and becomes his driver. If they don't have a Christopher, type relationship, I will be shocked.
Yeah, I mean, you can already kind of see it in the trailer because it at least gives me a hint of like, you know, we'll see more of a softer side of Cobblepot because he's taking a liking to this kid, but probably has to wrestle with the idea of essentially corrupting his innocence. So we'll have to see how that plays out. And I imagine they'll save some sort of Batman type cameo for like the finale or something, or at the very least, I mean. At the very least, the best thing about being like from an underworld point of view or a goon point of view is that you can have Batman, but you don't have to have Batman because he's basically like from your point of view, he's just a guy that grabs you from the shadows and kicks the shit out of you. It all happens so quick you don't even see him.
Yeah, so it could be just as good as the TV show Gotham. We have that to look forward to.
Yeah,
but I guess that was a prequel, and Batman was in it. But you know. So it's Comic-Con days. So I guess there's a lot of news when it comes to films, but as you said, they're becoming increasingly intertwined, and we see various updates. What else is in the news from the old Comic-Con this year, Jim?
Well, I mean, this is kind of similar. This is a connection to my thought I had last week when I was discussing The Boys entering their final season, because there's all these talks of spinoffs. And I mean, there already is an existing spinoff, Gen V, which, because what they're saying right now is that with The Boys season 5 is what the one we're going into, which is going to be the last season. We're probably not going to see that until 2026 anyways. So we got another 2-year break. But next year in 2025, we will have season 2 of Gen V, which I'm sure will play a part. But they've also now announced a new spinoff it's a prequel. It's focusing on Soldier Boy and Vought Rising. Aya Cash, who played, I forget the character's name. What was the name of her character? Because she was in season 2, I believe. Oh, Stormfront. Remember, like the racist love interest for Homelander.
Yeah, I mean, spoilers for The Boys, but like, why, why do we need so it's a Stormfront prequel? Yeah.
Well,
and
I guess
Soldier Boy.
Yeah, because I mean, we have seen flashbacks. Although I feel like we've got everything we needed out of those flashbacks to see like the history of superheroes. But now it's going to, Jensen Ackles and Aya Cash will be reprising their roles as Soldier Boy and Stormfront. It'll be set in 1950s New York. They announced this at the Comic-Con panel. It's they called the prequel a lurid pulp saga. We're excited to bring you the next deranged series from the world of The Boys. Vought Rising, showrunner Paul Grelong said in a statement, it's a twisted murder mystery about the origins of Vought in the 1950s, the early exploits of Soldier Boy, and the diabolic maneuvers of a soup known to fans as Stormfront, who was then going by the name Clara Vought or Voight. We cannot wait to blow your minds and trouble your souls with the salacious grisly saga drenched in blood and Compound V. Now, see, but here's my problem with this. It's not even just the overarching, like, there's the, again, going back to like the death of creativity and how IP has to be tied to every single story. I'm not even getting into that. It's more so that this is like a perfect exhibit of like kind of my problem with The Boys in general, because The Boys will do these episodes. They'll have bits about how stupid it is, about like they had like a goof this season when they're doing a press conference announcing like all the spin-off movies and the universe and shit like that, and they're making fun of it. And like they do a lot of social media jokes about that as well. Like they have different Twitter accounts that goof on that. But then they're doing the thing. Like I don't like when someone is like coming in, because I don't feel like they're trying to playfully joke about these things. I feel like they think they're doing like hard-hitting cultural criticism. But then they're doing
I kind of lost track of what you meant there. So what are the jokes that they're putting out that they're now also doing?
Well, they make because the whole goof
like the
is,
fake shows in the show, or
the whole goof is how Disney or Marvel will do a press conference, and the goof is the big image behind them that has the year. It'll have like the years, and then it'll have all the projects. You know what I mean? You'll see a logo for Miss Marvel, you'll see a logo for the Agatha show, you'll see a logo, and it has it all laid out in the timeline and the phases or whatever. They did a goof this season. I mean, I think you might have already watched that episode where they were joking, like goofing on the Boys universe movies and their sitcoms and their drama movies, and then they have like the extended bit with like the A-Train movie and stuff like that. And then they made the joke about how like, well, like, this kind of a spoiler, but like, oh, the A-Train movie's not coming out because it makes more money as a tax write-off or whatever. Right. But like, I don't know, you don't get to be the edgy, hard-hitting, we're giving culture what for, and then do the thing. Like, why are you doing the thing?
They're absolutely doing the thing. I would kind of like if at least some of these spin-offs were just like in-universe TV shows or movies that somehow had some sort of meta-narrative, because they're already playing with that in the show, right? When you read me that description, I was like, I don't care. Like, I'm sure they'll make it relatively interesting, but it's always going to be a prequel. There's only so much you can do to get me interested in what was happening in the 1950s. And oh my God, Vought are Nazis. Like, we've known that for seasons. Like, it's all, I don't know. Like, but there's nothing feels fresh or innovative about it. The whole thing about The Boys is from the start that you were like, oh, this feels like a new thing, a new and interesting thing, even if it's based on an existing IP. So going on and then creating a bunch of, they're fully doing the thing that you're describing, right? Like, let's pump a bunch of shows out, and some of them will probably be good. I didn't finish Generation V. I don't care. But that's just me. I'm not. If you really love The Boys, I guess this is great news. Do we know if this is like? Are there hinting even? So how many are there now? We have Gen V. We have this prequel thing. Was there a The Boys Mexico? Did I see that?
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. I guess they had mentioned that Gael Garcia Bernal confirmed it in December that he was working on a spin-off series for The Boys set in Mexico. With the writer Blue Beetle, Gareth Dunnett Alcacer. I don't know if I said that right. I apologize. They were writing a treatment. He said, I'm very excited about what we can do because we can do something very interesting in Latin America. But then, it's funny that he mentioned that in December, but then Kripke, the Boys showrunner, creator of Supernatural, recently had to be like, oh, we're a while away from that. So it's the same shit that you see with, Marvel, Disney, or Warner's and DC, where it's like they're even jumping the gun announcing shit that might not even fucking happen. Like, it's barely at a stage where it's an idea.
Well, it'll come full circle, and one or multiple of these will be tax write-offs eventually. Like, that's the the true meta narrative that I guess I'm asking for here. And I did say this before we started recording, but I get why they want to ride this fucking thing now while people are still excited about The Boys. But if they waited until they had a really successful finale and then at that point announced, here's the next show coming up, I would be like, oh, great. Everyone liked the ending of The Boys. It fulfilled its promise. Those same creators or people they trust are now creating a bigger narrative. That's not really where we're at right now. Right now, it's kind of pre-end of Game of Thrones, and they're like, we're going to make 20 shows. And then they eventually do. But, they're not making 20 shows anymore because they didn't stick the landing. Are they going to stick the landing in The Boys? Or are all of these shows going to get canceled? That's what we're going to find out.
Yeah. So, it's just going back to what I had said last week. It's hard to, usually a show, if you're into a show, and then they say, hey, next season's the last season, that has a certain excitement and feeling to it, where you're like, oh shit, fuck, things are all in a place to come to an ending, or like you said, deliver on its promise. I'm excited. It's bittersweet. I'm excited to see what they're gonna do. All bets are off now. Let's see where these characters end up, some of these beloved characters. But in this day and age, when they do that, and then at the same time, they're like, well, we're working on this, working on that, working on that. It's like, you don't get that feeling. And maybe this is just the old guy in me that's like, oh, man, what the fuck? But I don't know. It was the point I was trying to make. And it's like, here we go. Not even a week later, we're already discussing all these things. But I agree with you. If they had just finished it up and then talked about these things, maybe that's a whole different ball game. But again, we're 2 years away. They can't let that go away.
But I'm not in marketing, and I don't know if that is actually the right thing. I just know as a consumer at the end point how I would feel about it, doing it different ways. It takes a long time, especially these days, to make these shows. So they have to decide now if they're going to make something probably, and then they have to put it out, and they have to get contracts, all this bullshit. Just as the end user, as the consumer, I guess I'm the wrong person to comment on it because I haven't even finished the most recent season of The Boys, right? So I'm not going to I guess I'm not the target audience for this, but I think they are, scarcity does breed some excitement. to answer your earlier questions of like, are there too many shows? Possibly there are too many The Boys shows for you to get excited about each one. That's kind of everyone's trying to do the Marvel thing, but Marvel diluted its brand so much with subpar products that now no one cares about it. So maybe learn that lesson as well as trying to do what they did successfully, you know?
Absolutely. And I mean, not to be to keep it on the same topic, Dexter also decided to be like, oh, you think you know what's up, The Boys? Well, we're also at San Diego Comic-Con because we're hyping up our prequel series that everyone asked for.
That's crazy. They're making a prequel?
Yeah.
But Jim, I want a sequel.
Oh, well, I mean, you may have missed that they already did a sequel, but don't worry. They also announced another sequel, a sequel to the sequel. Couldn't even let their prequel series air in December. Had to kind of take the shine away from it, and also announce that in the summertime there will be Dexter Resurrection will be coming to wherever the Showtime, whatever it is.
Which, to be clear, is not. So, what are the names of all of these Dexter properties at this stage? Because the sequel series. This is not season 2 of that. That was billed as a mini series, and I guess now they're making another mini series that's a sequel to that one. I think that's actually a season 2, guys. You're just trying to sneak your way into the other Emmy categories. What it feels like to me.
No, absolutely, and because I don't even remember what the other sequel was, the mini series that they released. But did
you watch it? I downloaded it but never watched it. So that's how much I was engaged with that whole situation.
We watched the first episode, and it wasn't like bad or anything, but I forget why. Then I just kind of didn't. I guess it just showed I didn't care that much. It's hilarious too because Dexter famously has like what people agree on is one of the worst endings, the original series. So maybe at least when they announced like a mini series, it was kind of like, oh, maybe they could fix that or something. And then,
I just didn't hear great things, so I did not check it out. Sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say, and then people were pretty let down or not. It was mixed at best for the ending to the mini series. So
which was New Blood, by the way.
That's
so
what it was.
Dexter New Blood.
And now
I was saying that the prequel series should be First Blood, but now there's a prequel series and a sequel series. So clear this up for me, please.
New Blood would have been great, but no, Dexter Original Sin will be the prequel series. That Michael C. Hall does do the voiceover, which is even kind of more like, I guess not confusing is not the right word. I guess like diluted. I don't know. Like it's just convoluted, I think is the word. Like, I don't know. Why is adult Dexter given the voiceover except for the fact that he's Dexter and it's like, oh, I'm still here even though it's a younger actor playing me. And from my understanding, even though this is supposed to be like Dexter either like fresh out of college or something like that, from what I had seen, okay, no, it's 15 years, 10 episode prequel set 1991, 15 years before the events of Dexter, as he transitions from student to avenging serial killer. But I thought I saw casting announcements where like some of his coworkers are in it, younger versions of them. Even though it's like 15. Although Sarah Michelle Gellar, Buffy the Vampire Slayer herself, is also in this show. She plays she plays Dexter's boss at, where is he working? Oh, he's doing an internship, at Miami Metro. All right, so maybe that's how they have younger versions of some of the characters from the original show, because he's an intern there. This just sounds terrible, but...
Well, Sarah Michelle Gellar, I'm more on board with it. Who's playing Dexter? Do we know? We have to know, right? At this stage?
The actor was there. Oh my God, who plays Dexter?
Just wondering, does he look like him?
Yeah. Who does play Dexter? Because they released the opening credits at Comic-Con. They put it online, and it's basically like a redo. Christian Slater plays his dad. So Christian Slater is the younger version of his dad. and it's a redo of the original opening, where the original opening showed like Dexter's start of his day, but it was shot in a way that looked, evil, like villainous, killer, like
making juice and all this shit. Yeah.
But yeah, who does play young? I assume it's like an unknown. Devin Gray, is this correct?
I don't know. Let's find out.
Yeah, I'm trying to see. Was he in?
Sorry, I put you on the spot with this one, but I was just like, I feel like
I should have had it.
If it was a known person, it would have been like the main news, right? Like if it was Timothy Chalamet, they would have mentioned it.
Yeah.
It's Devin Gray Fleming, best known for portraying. Or no, sorry, is this? He's portraying teenage Dexter in the TV series Dexter, but I don't know. Oh, is that just like the?
That might be, that might be. That's not from the original.
That's in the original show. Okay, let's abandon this topic. I don't even care.
It's funny because it's like they're no. Here it is. It's Patrick Gibson. I found it here. Patrick Gibson. Let me see. What else is he from? He was on the OA, which we did watch.
Okay. Oh yeah, I know his face. He looks kind of creepy. He could be a young Dexter. He was in the film Tolkien, I guess, as well. But it wasn't Tolkien, so no one cares.
Yeah. I mean, he's been a working actor for a while. It doesn't look like anything huge that popped, like where his starring role. But yeah, now he gets to be young Dexter.
Let's just say I'm not worried about the acting in the show Dexter, okay? That's not your top concern about the show Dexter, given how off the rails the original show went. Never mind how the prequel show or sequel show didn't live up to expectations. Now they're making two shows at the same time, sort of approaching the canon of the original show from two different directions. I guess I was just saying I want a sequel, so they are making that. But that's so this is the prequel with Patrick Gibson. They're also making a sequel that you said was called Dexter Resurrections or something like that. Mm-hmm. So okay. I guess that's fine.
And I guess
okay.
Like going through the article here on the announcement, I guess this is kind of pointing to why, because the original show, the original Dexter, like not the sequel series, has been rising on the streaming charts. It was number 2 the week of June 24th. And I swear to God, that was probably the week they were like, you know what? Let's do another one. Even though, like, I mean, I didn't finish New Blood, but I mean, I have an idea of how it ended, and the title of the sequel might give a hint to that. So we'll have to see how they pull that off. But yeah, I mean, Christian Slater as Harry Morgan, that could be interesting, at least in the prequel. Patrick Dempsey's also in it. I like Patrick Dempsey. But yeah, it's just another, like, it's just a dead horse that Dexter can take a blood sample from and beat the shit out of and continue on.
Yeah, sounds great. Well, on the topic of new shows, I think one of the main things that we could deliver to people listening to this podcast is letting you know about what's coming up that you might not have heard about, because I'm always wishing that I knew about shows before suddenly there's a trailer and something drops next week. Like, we hear about all the big shows, all the tent poles, but all of a sudden, oh, there's a new thing on Apple TV, there's a new thing on Netflix, and it's coming out right now. So here's a couple of things I've been looking up that are currently in production in the UK and Ireland. The first of these I wanted to tell you about, Jim, is House of Guinness, which actually explores the beginning of the infamous brewing dynasty. So it's sort of reimagining the period immediately after the death of Sir Benjamin Guinness, the man responsible for sort of starting up the Guinness brewery, and the impact on his 4 children. And I get a sense that it's kind of going for a bit of a Succession vibe, but with Guinness. So, I mean, I live in Dublin, where they brew they have the Guinness storehouse and the brewery. I know people who work at Guinness. It is a national institution, as much of a stereotype as that might seem from the outside looking in. I was pleasantly surprised that this is currently in production. They'll be filming that in Manchester for some reason, not not in Ireland, but they're filming it in Manchester from July to December. It will be distributed by Netflix. I did look at the cast. I didn't see an enormous amount of people you'd know that are very famous, but it is created by Stephen Knight, who also created Peaky Blinders and, less importantly, also created Taboo. So he's got kind of positives and negatives in his history. What's your reaction as a non-Irish person hearing this news, Jim?
Well, I've never seen Peaky Blinders. I know people love that show.
But have you ever drank a Guinness?
Oh yeah, I've drank a Guinness before. I've also drank many an Irish car bomb. Can you order an Irish car bomb in bars in the pub there?
I'd say in probably in the why am I blanking on the name? You can if you go to the touristy parts, okay? Probably.
Okay.
But they'd probably also spit in it. So it's
Yeah,
can I get a
enjoy it.
911? I'm just here in New York. Like, can I get a 911 special? We have that back at home.
But it'd be more like ordering a 911 in like Afghanistan or Saudi Arabia if you're in the know. You know what I mean? Because isn't the Irish car bomb, isn't it the good thing? Isn't that Ireland like fighting back?
This is a topic that, well, I guess I did open this can of worms.
Yeah, I should have went down this road.
I mean, we could get into this if you want. I do have other shows to explain to you, but yeah, I from my perspective, I was just like, okay. First when I saw it, I was like, what is this, a documentary? But no, it's like a drama or whatever, and I'm like, okay, this could be kind of interesting. You said you've had a Guinness, but you've never had a Guinness in Ireland. Doesn't taste the same. I guess
true.
I've just been
love
brainwashed. I had if you go to the Guinness storehouse, you will be brainwashed. It's just like the Coca-Cola museum I went to in Atlanta. You come out going like, there's just something special about Coke, and I think it's the cocaine.
I could see that. Well, yeah, going back to your question then, again, like this, like, so you said it is more of a drama, but it is based off of like historical people, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, again, going back, that's not always a thing that I care about or that I'm that interested in. So it's going to come down to like a trailer or buzz for something like that on if I'm going to watch it.
I think that's fully fair enough, but something in production. I don't know the release dates for any of these, but that's why I'm letting you know about them now, so you can sort of, when there's eventually a trailer, you won't be like, "What the fuck?" You'll be like, "Oh yeah, what the fuck." So another show in production, since you don't want historical people, Young Sherlock. Yes, that's right. We've already done Enola Holmes 1 and 2. Now Prime Video is doing a TV adaptation of Sherlock Holmes, a young 19-year-old Sherlock Holmes solving his first case. It's currently being filmed in the UK, and I think it's a Guy Ritchie joint. I think Guy Ritchie is back on his Sherlock Holmes train here. Let me double check that, but yeah. More Sherlock Holmes. How do you feel about it?
So if Guy Ritchie is involved, does this mean it's supposed to be like a prequel to his existing films, like his Robert Downey Jr. films?
That's an excellent question. I don't see Robert himself on the cast list here. Not that that means anything. But yes, it is directed by Guy Ritchie, based on a series of young adult thriller novels that are actually based on the original novels. So there is a series, apparently, Young Sherlock Holmes, that's sort of like a YA rebranding of this legendary detective that was published in the 2010s and I guess is still being published. So they have something to go off. I feel like maybe it was something similar with Enola Holmes, if you're familiar with that one. They put it all over Netflix, right? But yeah, I don't know. I can't. I mean, would there be a... No, it just says here that it's like by Guy Ritchie, who has previously done these things. It doesn't say outright, oh yeah, it's definitely the same Sherlock Holmes. But like, that's the thing with Sherlock Holmes, right? Like there's a billion different versions. You can pretend some are the same or some are different. And if he's 19 years old here, I can only assume they're going for a similar vibe as the Sherlock Holmes films made by Guy Ritchie. Otherwise, why would he be involved? And, there are a lot of positives about those. So, maybe that's worth seeing. Now we have Colin Firth appears in it, and I don't actually know the guy playing the young Sherlock Holmes. His name is Hero Finn's Tiffin. And I don't really know him. He was a young Lord Voldemort in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, I guess, but don't really know him from much. So another unknown maybe crashing onto the scene. They're currently making it, and it should be on Prime Video at some stage soonish.
I would only be interested in this if it was present day. I'm not a big Sherlock Holmes guy. Again, I think this ties into like, you know, you mentioned almost like a period piece, or what was like Edgerton? Is it Edgerton that you watch? What's that show?
Bridgerton,
Edgerton. Yeah. Whatever. Once you start getting into castles and like frilly dresses and all that shit and stupid ass looking suits that they wore, I don't even like. I just zone out, man. It takes like I'm not fully against it. I'll watch it like if I hear good stuff, but like it doesn't pop on my radar.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's great that we are hosting this show together, because we have such a vastly different interests when it comes to some of these shows. So we cover all the angles here at Shows What You Know.
Absolutely.
So we already talked about before the new Lisa McGee TV show, How to Get to Heaven from Belfast. Not much to say about that one other than it's currently in production and will be on Netflix eventually. There is another TV show here called The Girlfriend, which is directed by and starring Robin Wright. Jesus. Yeah, okay. Of course, House of Cards fame and, you know, many other things.
Forrest Gump.
And apparently this sounds like some sort of drama as well. It's a mother's life spirals out of control in an effort to protect her son from his new girlfriend, and it's going to Prime Video. And this is based on a novel called The Girlfriend as well. That's a tagline designed to have me not interested. So by the logic of what we just said, does that get you really interested? Because to me that sounds like some Gone Girl bullshit, and I'm like, I don't care. How do you feel about it?
No, yeah, that sounds like, like you said, like Gone Girl, or like The Girl on the Train, or whatever. Or The Girl in the Window. There was like movies like that, but it sounds like it's for older women, because I'm sure a lot of it's gonna play out as like, is she just crazy? Is she just like an overbearing mother that's like way too concerned? And they'll probably play a lot with that, and then it's gonna turn out like, nope, she was right all along. This new girlfriend is a serial killer.
Yeah.
She's trying to take her baby boy.
Yeah, that's thrillers, isn't it? Well, speaking of thrillers, there's a thriller in production, a spy thriller called The Agency. Now, this is an adaptation of a French TV show. It's about an undercover spy forced to return to normal life. This is going to be eventually on Paramount Plus, and it stars Michael Fassbender, Richard Gere, and Jeffrey Wright. It's also produced by George Clooney. So really, the premise isn't necessarily like blowing my mind here or anything, but just from the people involved, it gets you to sit up and pay attention, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I was going to say the same thing. It's like, it's especially the title and the description are very generic, but the people involved does give me some intrigue for sure.
Yeah, and it's an adaptation of a French TV show that, you know, the first season got positive reviews. Quote from Wikipedia, the second season has been universally acclaimed, has been seen by some as one of the best television ever produced in France, one of the best TV shows ever produced in France, which is, you know, I do watch things with subtitles, but I'm also not like, oh, let me go watch Le Bureau. Like, I don't care, but it just the fact that base exists, you're like, well, you've got a pretty promising cast, and you probably can't fuck up the plot that badly if there's already a version of this that has such critical acclaim to it. So, you know, it's relatively promising.
Yeah, I'm with it.
The last one here, I'm not going through all of them, and I've skipped a lot of, like, you know, Wednesday season 2 or season 2 also in production at the moment. The last, because I'm just going through like new things you might not have heard of. So Mixtape, a 4-part mini-series and love story adapted from the novel with the same name, set between Sheffield and Australia. So it says distributor Binge here. I'm not familiar with Binge, but it's being filmed in Dublin, in Wicklow, here in Ireland. And I did read the summary of the book, which is basically, yeah, it's a love story, kind of between two people separated by time zones, and they send each other mixtapes, I guess. I don't have too much to say about it, but I was like, okay, I looked at the cover. It has a lot of reviews on Goodreads, and I was like, I could see how there might be a base of people who are interested enough in it to turn it to like make it moderately successful. And honestly, the fact that it's 4 episodes and a miniseries, I'm like, sounds like if you have a solid basis for this, maybe you can't fuck it up too bad.
So is there any stars in this or no?
Yeah, I thought I had it here, but apparently I don't. Teresa Palmer, Jim Sturgis are the 2 names I'm seeing attached to this.
Teresa Palmer, I've seen in things before. Jim Sturgis sounds familiar as well.
And
so
Lucy Gaffey is the series creator. Looking her up currently.
So I assume this is like, the book maybe like the chapters are like song titles and like this. I mean, I'm saying it in almost like a mocking way, but I don't mean it that way. I could just kind of get it from at least the premise, but also I could see that could be really well done and effective. So I like it.
Yeah, and they'll actually like be able to, much like something like Daisy Jones and the Six, which is so much about music, but obviously it's a novel. When they turn that into a TV show, they get to actually explore those aspects. I mean, I'm sure it's going to have great needle drops on here. And I'm looking at Lucy Gaffey. I feel like I recognize her face, and she has made directed a bunch of episodes of TV previously. But I think maybe this is her first big creation. I could be wrong about that. There's a few different things on here. So, just throw that in because I was like, that also sounds like something that when it comes out, you'll be able to say, I knew about this ahead of time because I listened to showswhatyouknow.com.
Yes, Jim Sturgis was in Across the Universe, that bad Beatles musical movie that came out in 2007. That's where I knew the name from. He's been in some other stuff as well, but that was the first thing that popped out. But anyways, it's good to know, and it's good to see that we're continuing the plot thread that Ireland has taken over our streaming television productions.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's that. Moving on.
What TV shows have you been watching? Tell me, I gotta know.
Well, Jacob, I told you was it 2 weeks ago maybe, that I was watching Hard Knocks, Back Office, or whatever the hell it's called. I mean, the
American football documentary show.
Yes. Although, like, the other version of that will be kicking up soon, the one that's actually preseason football.
Oh, that's a great name. Kicking up soon?
Yeah.
Is that the name of it?
I wish. But in that same vein, I've been watching Wide Receivers on Netflix, which is also an NFL or American football, or actually just football. Come on. Football documentary. They did a previous season on quarterbacks, which I didn't see.
Is this about like the position of like on the field of wide receiver? I just thought it sounded like some sort of sex joke or whatever. But you're saying is it about different wide receivers on different teams?
Yes. Yeah. I guess it's called receiver. I'm sorry, but it is the position is wide receiver. But yeah, it's called receiver. They had one a year ago before, which was quarterbacks. So it just follows different receiver players on different teams. I've only watched 2 of the episodes so far, where they follow a tight end and a receiver. Yeah, I know these are all sexual things, Jacob. Get your jokes out, get your comments. They follow a couple from the 49ers.
Yeah.
And some other teams. It's just interesting to see because you see more of like the behind the scenes, like the work that goes involved, but also you get to meet the families and kind of see what their home life's like. If some of them have kids, some of them, just have like a wife and a dog, but like they're celebrating their 30th birthday. But it plays out through like last NFL season. So you do have, if you've paid attention, you do have the hindsight of where their season goes, like as far as do they make the Super Bowl, do they not, whatever. But you get to see what was going into each week or each of those games. I mean, I don't know if it's going to track every single game because it does seem like it bounces around a bit from the two I watched. Like it kind of shows a few games with one team, and then in the next episode they'll kind of go back to a different team, but like those same early games from the season. It's just impressive. It's just always like football, at least to me anyways. I mean, obviously the European mind can't comprehend American football because there's a lot of stop and go. That's what I hear the big concern is. But to me, it's a very cinematic sport. And then with the way these documentaries are shot and with the footage they have, it just kind of amps that up a bit. So,
well, sure, when you edit out all the ads, it's cinematic, Jim. Hey, am I right?
True.
I know this through context clues. Okay, so I feel like, sport documentaries and specifically sport documentary TV shows are a much bigger thing than I've previously realized. Because there's this one and the one you told me about previously, but like there's a bunch of these. If you go digging on any streaming service, it's like, guess what? Like we have documentaries on not every sports team, but like every major sports team has a pretty big following, and every major sport has a pretty big following. I mean, I know I'm saying things that are obvious, but just as a person who is not a fan of any sports at all, to me, I'm just like, oh yeah. Anytime I start digging into it, I'm like, oh yeah, this rabbit hole goes pretty deep. I was listening to some football podcasts because I was doing like a parody podcast of a sports podcast or whatever. So I had to, so I was listening to some different ones, and I was just like, the range of different types of podcasts about different parts of the sport and all this. It's such a deep rabbit hole for people to go into. So and in any genre, if someone does something well and cinematically, that's I guess to be admired. But yeah. You can't sell me on it, Jim, because you can't sell me on the sport. So it's hard for me to get him. It's like the frilly dresses to me. I'm like, what are they doing? I'm just zoning out,
I gotcha. Yeah, so I did pull it up real quick because I was trying to remember who they cover. They cover Devontae Adams of the Las Vegas Raiders, George Kittle of the San Francisco 49ers, Deebo Samuel from the San Francisco 49ers, Justin Jefferson from the Minnesota Vikings, and then Amon-Ra St. Brown from Detroit Lions. Now, a quick little tidbit, which I didn't know until I watched the show. I mean, I guess if I paid more attention, I probably would have known this. But Justin Jefferson, Jakob, of the Minnesota Vikings, is also the creator of the Gritty. You ever hear about someone hitting their Gritty?
Is that a dance?
Yes, it is.
I didn't know that, but it makes sense because I also hear about a lot of dances coming out from when you go to the finish line of the sport, end zone, and then you do a little dance or whatever, and then that's on TikTok. So is that is that a big one?
Yeah, that became a big one, and I had always heard of the Gritty, but they get into a little bit of the just something he did in college, and then it started catching on, and then he's seeing it on TV and other people doing it. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, like you said, we talk about parasocial relationships. Sports stars were like the original kind of, but now because it's just, if your dad or your uncle, if he was watching sports on TV, if you're over for a holiday or something, and they're always like, John St. Thorpe, he's the greatest pitcher in the league, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, if you had like a sports relative that knew stats and stuff like that, years ago when that was the thing, like they felt like they were connected because they liked them when people didn't, when the team was bad. I stood by him and then they did good and I got to see him accomplish his dreams. And now that gets even more blurred because social media, now we have more of these documentaries where you get to see like their family lives and like how like everything that goes into becoming a professional athlete at the highest level. Just kind of interesting to see it all play out.
Yeah, for sure. I would argue the original parasocial relationships might be your kings and your queens and whatnot. Your, your feudal lords. We must die for him, yet he has never done anything for us. But that's just a different tact, I suppose.
I was talking more about in my lifetime.
That's understandable. That's what normal people do. Yeah, great.
What TV shows have you been watching? Tell me, I gotta know.
Jim,
Jacob,
do you know what my favorite novel is? Probably some gay shit. It's like I just imagined you answering like probably some really stupid bullshit.
Catcher in the Rye.
No. My favorite novel is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. I read it when I was a teenager, and I reread it very recently this year and was like, oh, it's still my favorite novel. Now, this is a book that's sort of written as if it was, this is like everything you hate. This is a book that's like as if it was written in the 1800s, but obviously it was released in 2004. It's got it's kind of got a Jane Austen-esque type vibe to it, and it's set in an alternative history world. So it's set in England during the Napoleonic Wars, which is the beginning of the 1800s, but it's an alternative history where magic is widely acknowledged. People know that magic once existed, and it just kind of isn't a thing anymore. It's a world where fairy, the sort of fairy realm, was once closely connected to England, but that's no longer the case. And the story follows Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, who are two practical magicians who are able to actually work all this ancient magic that only exists in history books, and sort of the impact that their sudden emergence has on society. And yeah, it's a fabulous book, and it's a very immersive sort of world that she's built, and it feels pretty unique in that it is written as if it was published at that time. The sort of style of it is like you're reading a Jane Austen novel or something along those lines. So that's my favorite book. But this is not a book club podcast, is it, Jim? So.
Nope.
After I finished, or as I was rereading this book, I was like, wait a minute, wasn't there a TV show version of this? Because I remember originally reading it and being really excited that there might be a visual adaptation at some stage. And indeed, in 2015, they did create a TV adaptation of this show. Which I didn't remember super clearly or necessarily super fondly. I just knew that it existed. They made it. It was pretty solid, but it didn't stick with me as much as the book. So I've gone back and I'm currently rewatching this show, and I'm about halfway through it. And you know what? It's pretty good. It's got Eddie Marsan in it as Norrell. It's got Mark Warren, who people might know anyway as Danny Blue in Hustle, a TV show about confidence tricksters in the UK. He's also in Band of Brothers, but that's less important, obviously.
Ooh,
and yeah, it's basically feels like it's a really generally competent adaptation of the book. But I wanted to bring it up because I have so many thoughts about it and no one else will listen to me, Jim. So here we are.
All right.
So first of all, the vibe of it is, I don't know, there's a lot of like creepy, spooky stuff that happens because the world of fairy, there are fairies that exist in this world, right? But they're not like little flying around with wings fairies. They're not Tinkerbells. They're like scary, weird creatures that you do pacts with them, but you don't really understand what the pact is, and all of a sudden you're gone for 100 years, but it feels like you were gone for one day working in a field or whatever. Like all this weird sort of ominous shit. And the way they've done it in the show, I feel like, is pretty on the nose. So they'll have like spooky music and like Dutch tilts, the sort of turn the camera, and like it's very clearly like you are supposed to be spooked out right now or whatever. And I feel like the ideal way to make this show would be a more sort of A24 creepiness, right? Like kind of have it shot as if it were a period drama rather than have the whole thing be over dramatized. Shoot it like it's a period drama that's very understated, but then have those creepy elements that are, and make them I don't know, creepy in an understated sort of way. Do you kind of get what I'm saying? There's just like something about the fairies, like the main antagonist, it wears the costuming. You can kind of tell that the leaves in his suit, they look a little bit plasticky. And I'm like, it's fine. Like, it's a competent adaptation because the story of the book is really long and complicated and they make it all come together pretty well. But I was just like, the vibe, I guess I was just asking too much of it. I was asking them to take what was there and transform it into a cinematic masterpiece in the same way that I feel like the book is a literary masterpiece. And it's not that. It's just kind of a pretty competent adaptation. And I think people would enjoy it in general, unless they're like you and check out as soon as there's any frilly dresses or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's pretty competent. I just kind of wish there was more to it, you know?
And I'm sorry if you mentioned this. Who produced the show?
So
was
I
this
mean,
like a BBC thing, or was this?
It's a
for...
BBC production.
Okay.
I was looking at who like actually directed it, which is Toby Haynes. But I didn't really like. Oh, I guess he worked on Andor.
I was gonna say the name
I
sounds a little familiar. Yeah, I meant more so like the network. I guess I could have assumed it was
BBC
BBC
production.
So you're still mostly positive though, and I feel like you would be, with it being your favorite book. I mean, I guess that could go two ways. That could either make you super critical, or that could make you super forgiving because it's so important to you. What, in your own judgment of how you're viewing the show, which side do you think you kind of come across on?
Oh, super critical, because I think if you didn't know it, if you hadn't read the book and you watched it, you would probably be like, oh, this is pretty good. I should check out the book. But I read the book and I'm watching this like, well, you could have done this different and that different.
Okay.
But yeah, now I see Toby Haynes. He did direct a number of episodes. Like, I think the majority of episodes of Andor on here. He's not the creator of it, but yeah, he directed a lot of them, which is... You know, I don't think these are badly directed. They're well put together, but you can kind of sense the budget restraints. It's kind of like season 1 of Game of Thrones when King Robert is supposed to be out hunting. And obviously, if the king goes out hunting, there should be an enormous deal made out of it. But literally, it's season 1 of Game of Thrones. So he's just walking in the woods with like two people trailing behind him. It's a little bit that vibe because we go through the like entire Napoleonic Wars and stuff like that. And a lot of it is like, they have to do inventive things and just kind of have people marching on roads and not go into too much detail. I don't think that's bad, and I don't think that detracts from it. But I guess, yeah, I definitely fall on the more hypercritical side because I also had some thoughts on, like, they've added extra stuff, which makes sense. The book is very weird and you'd have to change things up to make it make sense. But I was like, okay, well, they added a bunch of Jonathan Strange stuff and I like that. But they also added a bunch of extra Norrell stuff, and all the stuff they added kind of makes him an extra asshole. And the thing is, that character is an asshole in the books, but I always thought the delicate balance of the relationship between the two main characters, between friends and foes, that was part of what was so interesting about it. And I feel like in the TV show, it's more clearly laid out that, like, yeah, Jonathan Strange is a pretty good guy. Mr. Norrell's a fucking asshole. Like, he's deplorable. He's terrible. And he is terrible in the book as well. You know, I'm just kind of, I guess I am... It's a long way of saying, yeah, I'm too critical of it because it's so dear to my heart. Because I'm like, well, Mr. Norrell wouldn't do that. I mean, he might be a terrible person, but he wouldn't do that.
Now, is this, I guess this wouldn't necessarily be like a YA thing or anything like that. Is this just more a general audience? Is this, like, whether the book or the show, is it targeted, like, or is it like a Game of Thrones where it's more for an adult audience? Like, what would you categorize it as?
I'd say it's closer to Game of Thrones. Definitely not like a young adult type vibe. But, you know, less gore than your Game of Thrones or whatever. And it's more, it's like, maybe Game of Thrones is a bad analogy, but it is really like a period drama that also has magic and warfare and stuff like that. So it's definitely for a more adult audience.
Gotcha. It's just when I guess probably because of like Doctor Strange, like when you hear someone with this, like with that name and it's like a magician and they're fairies, I just assume it's for like children. Not in a bad way. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I enjoy that are for children, but I just wasn't sure.
No, for sure. And I guess that's the thing that when the leaves on the suit jacket look a bit plasticky, I'm like, it feels like it tilts it in that direction where I want it to be like a fucking horror. I want it to be pure horror when these fairies are around, because that's the vibe I get in the books where it's like they might just have a normal conversation with you, but like they warp people's minds and you don't really know what's happening. And the way that they do that is like, oh, let's move the camera and make it spooky. And I'm like, that's works. It definitely works. It just doesn't have as much of an impact as I would have loved to see. So just kind of bringing this one up. The book's from 2004, the TV show's from 2015. So, but if you, the dear listener, haven't heard of this before, check out both of them. I think I still think the TV show is a really good intro to it as well. Like I think it's pretty solid. And again, I have a couple episodes left here, but in general, it's I think it's good. It's you kind of sense the budget restraints a little bit, but it's a very solid adaptation, I would say.
And how many episodes?
There are 7 episodes, and it's a sort of a mini series. There's no more books, no more story. That's it.
Cool. Then is this? Well, I guess I was gonna say if there was something where they would be like Dextering or the boysing it, you'd already hear about that at this point. Like, oh, there's another book coming, or.
No, it took her like over 10 years to write this book, and you can tell when you read it. So she's written another book that's a completely different world since then, and I don't think we're getting anything more in this world, unfortunately.
All right, I got one more.
I would love that. I would love that.
I got one more.
What TV shows have you been watching? Tell me, I gotta know.
Now, doing this show actually does motivate me because I found what I've done in the past, I guess it's just a sign of getting older or whatever. You know, when I was younger, every new thing that came out, I would watch it. I'd be like, I got to watch this, whether I was excited for it or not. I don't know why.
I got to watch the challenge on an island. I got to watch the challenge in an airplane.
But lately, there's a lot of things where I'm like, oh, I want to check that out. I want to check that out. But then I just never do. I did, before recording today, I watched the first episode of the Apple TV series Sunny. Have you seen anything on this?
It's about like a robot or something?
Yes, with Rashida Jones. And I didn't notice this until a few minutes ago, but it is based off a book by Irish writer Colin O'Sullivan. So here we go. Another Ireland tie-in, kind of.
Hell yeah.
Haven't heard of the Irish writer. He moved to Japan to teach English for a year more than 20 years ago. So because that kind of explains things, because, yes, this does take place in Japan. Rashida Jones lives there. She has a husband and a son. Just basic premise stuff. I'm not going to spoil anything. At the beginning, you do see that she loses her husband and son to a tragedy. So it starts off like really, really nice and heavy. But then it kind of does start to steer into, it is like this, whether it be an alternate universe Japan or like a not too distant future, almost kind of like a Black Mirror, or even like it gives me a lot of Severance vibes as well, because it's like it's technology, but it's different technology. Like their phones are little like blocks kind of that they have. It doesn't have screens on them, but there's these little things they pick up and they use them like phones, or even they'll talk to them and it'll like project something on the wall where they could browse the web that way. And they do have these robots. They're like home robots. And when they're out and about, there are these other like kind of just robots in a cafeteria or like a function that are doing like menial labor. I've only watched one episode, but I'm digging the vibe for sure. And there's kind of, this Rashida Jones, she loses her husband and son. There's a line of dialogue where she does mention that she hates robots. She doesn't like robots. She says something about because a robot killed her mom. And someone's like, oh, my God, really? And then like someone else is like, well, it was an auto-driving car. It could have been user error. So I mean, I guess that does constitute a robot. So yeah, it does have. It is A24 as well. You mentioned A24 for the show you're watching. I didn't realize that going into it. I had just seen something on the show before. The first episode's about a little over 30 minutes, so it's a nice easy watch. I think it's a weekly release. I think we're up to season 1, episode 5 will be airing this week. Out of it looks like 10 episodes. But it shows a lot of promise. It kind of introduces like there's a mystery going on here. She does end up with a robot. Who does voice the robot? It sounded kind of familiar. No, Joanna. Joanna
Sotomura.
Sotomura. Although I guess I don't. Let me see. What else was she in? Yeah, no, I guess I don't know. I don't recognize any of these. Well, she was on. She played a character at least in one episode of The Good Place, but it looks like she was Team Cockroach. Oh, she's in the episode Team Cockroach as Veronique. Anyways, I like robots as well. I mean, I like things where
it's like the opposite of the past, so I like it.
Yeah, I guess I like, and it's not necessarily that this show is going to do that, but I enjoy like things like Real Steel, or even it's not a robot, but E.T., when it's like you meet this thing that becomes like a companion, and at least initially here, of course, our hero is declining the path of the hero, if you will. Like, I don't want this robot. Get this robot out of here. But it's like but the robot's so nice. But maybe there's some nefarious things going on. But again,
Iron Giant, that type of thing.
It is similar too, because I guess we always talk about how Apple TV shows always have this kind of bend to them, right? Like this sci-fi, like not even always hard sci-fi. I don't know if it's just because Apple's a technology company. Where do you think that comes from?
Yeah, dude, I've been telling you. So first off, everything on Sunny that you're saying all the right things as far as I'm concerned. It's episodes are about 30, 35 minutes. Great. Love that. It's an Apple TV science fiction show. They make a lot of good ones of them that don't get the attention that they deserve. It's listed as like a black comedy on here. Ideal. Sounds good. So I did see a trailer a good while back, and I was like, oh, this looks pretty interesting. This is definitely gonna get me on board. But yeah, I have a little theory that Apple TV, with their sort of trying to sell the Apple Vision Pro and being an enormous technology company, they need to push this future. They need futurism to come back and hit it big. Of course, they're the company making For All Mankind. They're the tech conglomerate that's absorbing other businesses and sort of selling this vision of the future. Now, I like a good bit of sci-fi as well, but I'm just saying there's something slightly nefarious. Maybe we make the black comedy series about this and we sell it to Apple TV. But jokes aside, I do think they make a lot of good. I mean, they make a lot of good stuff in this type of genre, disproportionately so. There's like 0 fantasy television shows being made on Apple TV. You'll note there's a lot of fantasy shows being thrown out by Prime and HBO or whatever. I haven't seen fucking any on it. Well, now there's maybe 1 or 2, but it is very interesting that they just keep approving this stuff. And I actually saw some news relatively recently about how absolutely terribly Apple TV is doing in terms of viewership, and how they probably have to tighten the belt buckles a little bit. Apparently every episode of Severance season 2 costs like $20 million, and that is more than fucking Game of Thrones. That's insane. So I don't know what they're doing over there, but at least this sounds like pretty interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because I do feel like they're making good stuff. Usually whenever I check, even though for whatever reason I don't check out a lot of their stuff, but I always hear good things, and when I do, it's good. So, but they are just throwing money at shit. And it does feel like, why the hell would Severance need episodes to be 20 million? Like, they're not in outer space. They're not doing Star Wars every episode, but either way, I'm excited for Severance. But yeah, I don't. Too. Maybe this could be something that, since we're kind of in like a midpoint with our shows, if it does sound interesting for you, maybe, and since it is weekly, if we both get caught up, maybe we can discuss this show a bit more to see if it's kind of fulfilling on this initial promise, and to see where it goes from there.
I'm gonna check out Sunny. That's my homework. I'm gonna give it a go, and we'll see. We'll see if it holds up past episode 1. That's a good recommend, Jim.
Yeah, and I'll get caught up as well. So, just a quick taste on that. But I guess that's that, because we thought this was an off week, but once again we went over an hour. So, what shows are you watching? You can let us know. Have you been watching Sunny? Are you excited for all of these Irish productions that are about to invade our TV screens?
Hell yeah. Or should I say, oh, hello, yeah.
Or you just want to, or if you want to just say hi, what's up, then drop us a line at showswhatyouknow@gmail.com. You can also find us on TikTok, Shows What You Know. And we're Shows What You Know on Twitter, or X, what people call it sometimes. But U is the letter U.
Yeah, fuck that one, though. I mean, I know we still post on there somewhere, but I'm just annoyed that we can't have, if Elon Musk's going to ruin Twitter, at least he can let us have a shows what you know without the letter U, so it could be consistent across platforms. That's all I ask.
Yeah. Well,
and,
anything else?
Stop exploiting, everyone. There's a lot of other stuff I'd ask as well. But no, nothing else. Check out showswhatyouknow.com. Keep up to date on what we're doing. Send us a review on Apple Podcasts and leave a comment on YouTube. That's about it.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
We our show's what you know. We'll always watch TV, and if you think we can't, we'll watch more and you'll see. That's why the people of the web believe in Jim from Las Vegas and Jakob from Sweden.